أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إذ قالت امرأة عمران رب إني نذرت لك ما في بطني محررا فتقبل مني إنك أنت السميع العليم فلما ودعتها قالت رب إني ودعتها أنثى والله أعلم بما ودعت وليس الذكر كالأنثى وإني سميتها مريم وإني أعوذها بك وذريتها من الشيطان الرجيم صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدق رسوله النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين. I bear witness that no God is there without Allah. I bear witness that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, is the last, the final messenger of Allah, after whom no prophet, old or new, will come. And I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. When the grandmother of Jesus, the Prophet and Messiah, was pregnant, she made a commitment to Allah. And it was this, that what is in my belly is for total devotion to you, Allah. Take it from me. Now, after she delivered, she thought, I have delivered a female. Obviously, a male is not as a female. The girl was named Mary, and she went on to live a pious life. She got married, and she had twins, one of whom was named Isa, or Jesus. Now, in the records that have been written and found in series of books that have been classified as New Testament and other records afterwards, it appears that Jesus was not married. And some have read from those documents, and some claim to have found certain documents to indicate that Jesus Christ was gay. And that is, in fact, an idea that has been tossed around in some of the academic fields. Now, the topic of gay is growing in emphasis all over the world. It is a required acceptance in primary schools, even at the primary level, in books, and in every media that children are exposed to. Video games, YouTube, movies, they all represent the concept and the idea of gay and marital relationships in which you have same-sex people and their families. And there's a campaign to impose this idea even from little children, onto little children, to have this acceptable in the community and society. But that is not the major problem. What is having a problem in the world is that there are new definitions that are being put forward that can be very confusing. And many of you are children yourselves. Many of you do have children who will be growing up into a society in which this campaign will probably increase more. And they and you will be affected by it. Because the modern trend is to claim that sex is different from gender. Now, sex has always been male or female and determined by what is seen between the legs of an individual at birth. That is how Mary was able to determine, Mary's mother, Jesus' grandmother, was able to determine, my Lord, I've given birth to a girl. It was the only means possible. But nowadays, biological sex is determined by more factors. They have listed about 5 factors, which I wouldn't go into, but 5 factors which are present at birth. And new terms are being invented now to deal with the challenges that this new concept of not accepting that there are 2 sexes, male and female, but there are more. There is, for example, the term gender identity, which means one's internal feeling of gender. Regardless of what is outside on the body, it is how one feels and thinks within. And that is called your identity or gender identity. So a person may be a male, but feels inside that they are female or vice versa. And there is transgender, those whose gender identity differs from their biological sex. If you agree that your organs are masculine and you think you're a male, that is called cisgender. And if you think it is different, you're transgender. But not only the physical appearance is a determining factor. There is also what is known as sexual orientation. And that is the emotional and the romantic attraction to other people, whether it is to somebody of the same sex or somebody of the opposite sex. It is important for all of us to be aware of the fact as to what is really going on in the world. It is not a plain and simple saying, well, we agree with homosexuality or we do not agree with homosexuality, or the Quran condemns it, or you should kill people, or you should do this or deal with it in this particular way. The issue is much more complex than that. Statistics have shown that between 2009 and 2019, children referred for transitioning from male to female or female to male in the United Kingdom increased 1,000% among biological males. So there was a 1,000% increase of young men wanting to transition into women. But then, the statistics for girls wanting to transition into boys is 4,400%. Among biological males, it is 1,000%. Among biological females who want to transition into males, the increase has been 4,400%. And girls across Europe and globally are now questioning their gender identity. Now, what we are being told is that what is outside the body and what is inside the body is said to be different. So that medical science is focusing more on treating what is outside of the body through drugs and operations. If a person is born a particular gender or sex, whichever term one uses, biologically, a person is a male or female, and later on in life they have feelings, and that is something normal, I think, for each and every individual, because we are all created from male and female, as the Quran says. What happens is that in the case of the biological female, there are certain qualities and traits which are more preponderant. They are more. and less of male, and vice versa. In the case of men, there are qualities which are more preponderant, more excessive, and less of the female qualities. But men and women have similar feelings. Women have that motherly feeling, men have it too at a lesser extent. Men have certain strength and courage and so on, women have it too, but to a lesser extent, and they can always enhance it. But what medical science is doing is focusing on treating those ideas within one's mind through drugs and operations. And after hormones are given and they affect the brain, then you find that plastic surgery is used to change, in some cases, one's sexual appearance. But even though a person may actually physically change their organs from one sex to another, they still have to deal with the emotional need and the love that every human being, including homosexuals, search for. Now, long ago, the science of psychiatry or psychiatry viewed homosexuality as a form of mental illness. Now, homosexuality is discussed as an aspect of personality disorder. And there are many names for that. One of the most common names that has been developed within recent times is called gender dysphoria. In other words, a person is dissatisfied with the gender they have been born with. It is said that when a person is born, the doctor looks at the ultrasound or looks at the actual baby when it is born, and what they see between the legs determine what they put on the certificate, male of M or F. But they say that later on, people realize that what the doctors put on the certificate is not who they really are. And they are searching for their own identity. Am I really a female? Am I really a male? I'm not looking at my body, I'm looking at my personality. So that long ago, because science and psychiatry did not understand the nature of the human being, because they didn't refer to scriptures such as the Quran, which deals with the human personality and how to deal with all the aberrations of human personality, all the rights and wrongs. And the Quran is quite clear on this. And what they used to do, therefore, in order to change the personality and to deal with homosexuality, they will take an ice pick and insert it through the eye socket, just below the bone here, and move it around in order to damage certain parts of the brain that they thought were affecting the human personality. Those sorts of horrendous scientific operations were done to treat homosexuality. Today, the treatment is what is called genital mutilation. That the female genitals are mutilated in order to make it male, and vice versa. The male genitals are mutilated in order to make them female. There is a case, in fact, there are several cases, but two particular cases that came out recently, and perhaps the young ones can look on YouTube and you'll find it, of a girl who was age 13. And she felt that she was a boy. So she was ashamed to tell her parents. She wrote a letter to her mother and left it there. But her parents were very supportive, if that is what you want. They therefore took her to a psychiatrist and who counseled her, but she insisted she wanted to be a boy. So the psychiatrist referred her to an endocrinologist, and the first one she went to said, look, girl, wait a bit. Don't give in to your feelings. But she was so determined, the parents took her to another one. And that one started her, well, of course, she had to sign certain forms about the effect of the drugs and what they're going to do and whatever was explained to her. And she said, I couldn't be bothered. I just want to be a boy, and I signed anything without even listening or understanding. She was first given what is called puberty blockers to prevent puberty from increasing. It would block them. And then later on, that went on for about a year, and then she was given hormones in order to change her features from female to male. And a little later on, she realized that she still had breasts, and she didn't like her appearance. And again, it dealt with the bullying, and she was had to go through several different emotional challenges in her school, in her own self, when she looks at her body as it's growing, when she's getting beard and all these things. And so she decided to remove both breasts. Young girl, at 15 years of age, decided to remove both breasts. And she said she was happy that she was now looking like a boy. Her shoulders were broadened and her features looked very boyish. But when she reached 18 years of age, she changed her mind. And she decided that she no longer wanted to be a boy, she wanted to be a girl. And so she had to now reverse all of that and had new treatment with female hormones now to bring her back. But then she realized that there are a lot of things that she would lose out in life. She didn't know if she was fertile enough to bear children and she'd like to have a family. She said, certainly I can't breastfeed my child because I have no breasts. And in some cases, in fact, there are about 1,000 cases in England where such incidents, when they happen, or similar incidents happen, where young people were able to sign documents in order to agree to the treatment given to them to transition from female to male, and they changed their mind. They decided to sue the doctors for bad advice and for mutilation of the body. That's not all. When the matter went to court, the court ruled that there's a principle called the Gillick competence. And that is that it is for the doctors, not the judges, to decide on the capacity of a person under 16 to consent to medical treatment, even without parents knowing. In other words, the law is such that a person under 18 or even under 16 years of age can go to a doctor and get advice on any aspect of sexual information and adopt any kind of and take any kind of drugs, whether it's contraceptive, whether it is hormone treatment, even if the parents object. And the courts cannot do anything about it. Even if they claim later on that they didn't understand what they were signing. Compare that, my dear sisters and brothers, with what we saw recently, a couple of years ago, when a law was passed in Trinidad and Tobago declaring the age of marriage as 18. And it was clearly stated that young people under the age of 18 cannot make informed decisions. They cannot consent to a marriage because they don't understand, they wouldn't understand the responsibilities of marriage. And it is hypocritical, therefore. And that Gillick competence will be applicable in Trinidad because it is British law and is applicable in Canada, in America, in Australia, New Zealand, and many other parts of the world. And obviously, we follow some aspects of British law here, and it will be applicable here as well. So doctors can claim that Gillick competence that the courts cannot allow a person to sue the doctors, even if the child went against the wishes of the parents. Neither the parent nor the child could take any action. This is the seriousness of the issue that is ongoing right now. Now, when you deal even with the issue of homosexuality, sexual identity, sexual orientation, and all of these various names, we realize that this gay lifestyle is taught to very, very young children, even though homosexuality is a complex social concern. It's not an easy matter. It's a complex social concern that is changing day by day. In fact, I have mentioned gender identity, gender orientation, and other things. it has been stated now that there are 13 types of sexual orientation with some funny names. And what we are seeing right now is that many homosexuals who claim, and people are not ashamed, they are what's called coming out now, they stand out by their cosmetic appearance. So you see a male individual be dressed up as a female and boldly and sometimes in a very exuberant manner. And they call themselves drag queen. I don't know if you know what drag means. D-R-A-G means dressed as a girl. D-R for dressed and A and G as a girl, dressed as a girl. And now society, we are seeing all over the world the annual gay parades where male revelers put on fake lashes or wigs or female underwear. And in the case of women, they put on male suits. They have boycott hairstyles or tomboy appearance. And we find this issue of homosexuality and its variations is being discussed as sexual orientation and sexual preferences and gender identity and so on. So some people identify as lesbian, some as gay, some as bisexual, some as transsexual. And so the movement is now what's called LGBT, lesbian, gays, bisexual, and trans. Now they have added another letter. Some people prefer to call themselves queer, so it becomes LGBTQ. But then they have added another letter, I, for standing for intersex. So it is now LGBTQI. But then there are other letters they want to add, so they have stopped there because they are estimated there are about 31 categories of sexual differences and preferences and whatever it is. So the expression now is LGBTQ plus. Add whatever you want. It's plus, it's not stopping there. My dear sisters and brothers, not because a person feels a sexual attraction to another, it is a right. Because I am attracted to another, therefore I have a right to live that kind of lifestyle. There are some people who are attracted to children, and the law would not allow that. It's not your right to have sexual relations with children, even though you like it, you enjoy it. And that is quite common in many parts of the world. In fact, that was the reason why the law was passed in Trinidad, limiting the age of marriage to from 18. Although, when it comes to sexual relations, that is a different ballfield, because the law has a very gray area so far as that is concerned. So that we find that the issue of homosexuality is not as simple as people think it is. A matter of just saying, well, whether Islam allows it or doesn't allow it. It is more than that. Homosexuality has now become a search or a struggle for identity, for a person to find themselves. And they claim that this is how we are finding happiness or pleasure. But we ask ourselves the question, what in fact is one's identity? What is my identity? Is it how I see myself as a male, a female, as how I dress, how I put my hairstyle or so? Yes, to some extent. Everybody has ways of looking at themselves and say, I'm looking nice, I'm feeling good. Or is it how others see me? That I wear this and I wear that because everybody is wearing it. It's the fashion now. So I want everybody to see that I'm in the fashion. I don't want to show my own identity if I disagree with something. If I don't want to wear top jeans, to some people that might be offensive. They feel that's the fashion and therefore we have to go that way. Or any other kind of garment that a person wants to wear. Or is one's identity really what Allah wants of me? What does God want of me? What kind of person? We must realize, and we are taught this in the Quran, and that is why in the society today, the people are so mixed up, because they don't believe in God, and more so, they don't believe in religion, and worse even, they don't believe in Islam. The Quran tells us that it is the Creator who defines our existence and our identity, not the created. It is not we who determine our identity. The Quran says it is Allah who shapes you in the wombs as He pleases. And that's why the Quran says the male is not like the female. They are different. But people are trying to make them the same by trying to say that, look, the mind is the controlling factor, not the body. Change the body to suit the mind. Don't change the mind to suit the body. But the Quran points out that, yes, there's a reality. First of all, Islamic law recognizes that there's a third sex. That there are some people who are born physically between male and female, having either a preponderance of male organs with female organs or vice versa. And it has rules and regulations for that. The books of Sharia or law determine not merely whether it is right or wrong, it determines whether a person can inherit. A person who is neither a male or female or is both, do they inherit the share of a male or a female? When they come to prayer, do they stand in the men's line or the women's line? And so many other, their rights. Are their rights to be given that is how Islam deals with this issue. It does not condemn people who, as some Muslims say, that the homosexual has to be taken on top of a mountain and dropped there. That is not the way at all. Homosexuality is one of the Quran says, upon Allah it is Allah's responsibility to show the right way. And there are some deviating ways. Yes, people will, there's no compulsion in religion. The Quran says, La ikraha fid din. And therefore people, the right way is clearly distinct from error, but there are people who go the wrong way. The Quran accepts that. And that is why Allah has revealed guidance to guide people back to the right way. Not to punish people, but to give them guidance, to show them their errors, and to help them along in the reformation or transformation of themselves. So homosexuality is one of those deviating ways. It's not the only one. The Quran deals with another even worse than that. That is called hypocrisy. And in a sense, homosexuality, to some extent, in some aspects of it, is in fact a hypocrisy as well. And the Quran describes hypocrisy as a disease and says that these people will be in the lowest steps of hell. But hypocrisy continues to exist. Murder continues to exist. That is something which no society acknowledges, but it does exist. Alcoholism, incest, and other types of evils, rape, all of these sins are obstacles to the development of the soul, but they do exist. And the punishment is not always that you put them on the top of a mountain and throw them down. But even in the society in which we live in today, to claim that you are someone that you are not is called cultural appropriation and fraud. And there have been cases where people have been either fined or jailed, I think. A girl once claimed that even though she had a white body, she felt that she was of African descent, that she was a Negro. And she worked very hard to help the African community. And then her parents came out and said, there's not an ounce of an inch of blackness in her. She's a white girl. And she was charged for cultural appropriation and fraud. And there have been other cases as well. In other words, you are not allowed to change your race, even if you want to. You can't say tomorrow, well, I don't feel I'm an Indian, I want to be a Chinese. Or I want to be an African. Or I want to be an Aborigine. Or I want to be whatever. You can't do that. It's called cultural appropriation, fraud, and is even an offense. So you're not allowed to change your race, even if you want to, but you're allowed to change your gender and be called heroic or courageous for coming out, as people are told. And perhaps later on, even change of religion may also be considered appropriation or fraud. We must realize and understand that Islam is not a religion that merely condemns people. It indicates to us that, look, it indicates to us that there are issues in our community and society, but there's guidance. The guidance is given to us by Almighty Allah. And that is why it is so important for us to understand the religion, to understand the teachings of the Quran, so that the best trans really is a person who studies the Quran, understands it, and realizes how I can transform my personality and make myself a better human being. Because everyone, children growing up, they lie, they cheat, they do so many things and so on. They do it innocently. They may not know what they are doing. But as they are educated and taught, they begin to change their minds. The Quran says, yes, you are like Nafs al-Amara. You are guided by your basic instincts. But you can be Nafs al-Lawama. You can change your personality. Personalities can be changed with the proper guidance and become a person who is now in control of himself or herself. We have disciplines like fasting and prayer and institutions such as giving in charity and the performance of pilgrimage or jihad, which is a struggle to make an effort to make yourself a better human being in some way or the other. All of these are guidance and guidelines given by the Quran. So that Islam is a religion that really teaches us that human beings need to realize and recognize that there are variations among human beings. In fact, if you look at it, I myself studied in Peshawar University in Pakistan. One of the first instructions I was given on the first day that I entered the Chancellor's office to register myself, I was told not to go out of the gates of the university in the day, but even more so in the night. Because at that time I was a young man. They said, you're too good looking and you'll be kidnapped for purposes of homosexuality. It was rampant there in the university that I studied in. It was common, and it's still common in many parts of the Afghanistan and northwest Pakistan. In fact, the Ahmadiyya movement has not been one that is condemning as others people do. One of the very famous persons who was a homosexual, a gentleman by the name of Dr. Hugo Marcus, Hamid Marcus, was a German Jew during the First and Second World War. And he was a very active member of the Berlin Mosque and assisted greatly, if not translated, the Quran of Maulana Muhammad Ali in German language. He assisted, and that was published by the Anjuman. So if he did in fact do the entire translation, it is acknowledged his contribution, that his name is not mentioned. But if he in fact did so, it would mean that may have been the first translation of the Quran by a gay person and published by the Ahmadiyya Anjuman. Our approach to the issue of homosexuality is not a matter of condemnation, but at the same time, it does not mean that we have to accept all that is put outside there of us. And we have to warn our young people and our young parents who are coming up and those who are not married yet when you are married and we are no longer here. You, in fact, will have issues that you will have to face. And we are willing now, with the information and knowledge that we have and the understanding of the Quran, to give the guidance and the training so that when that time comes, you'll be able to deal with those issues and assist your children in dealing with the challenges. I'm indicating this because of young people committing suicide because they cannot deal with this issue of gender identity and intersex and transitioning and all of these things that are confusing our young people because they've been pushed to them at a very young age. So we need to have our young people come out, talk about these things, discuss it. We are willing to lend an open ear. That is what this mosque, this Jamaat, and our Anjuman is in, opens itself to listening to people, hearing their genuine claims, and not being embarrassed to talk on issues like these, because we know at some point in time, someday, you may be affected by it. Barakallahu lana wa lakum fil Quran al-Azim, wa nafa'ana wa iyyakum bil ayati wa zikr al-hakim. Innahu ta'ala jawadun kareem, malikun barra'ufur rahim. Alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inahu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi. व नऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिन शुरूरि अनफुसिना व मिन सय्यिआति अमालिना मय यहदिहिल्लाहु फला मुदिल्ल लहु व मय युद्लिल फला हादिय लहु व नशहदु अल्ला इलाहा इल्लल्लाह वहदहु ला शरीका लहु व नशहदु अन्ना मुहम्मदन अब्दुहु व रसूलुहु। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मद व अला आलि मुहम्मद कमा सल्लैता अला इब्राहीम व अला आलि इब्राहीम इन्नका हमीदुम मजीद। अल्लाहुम्मा बारिक अला मुहम्मद व अला आलि मुहम्मद कमा बारकता अला इब्राहीम व अला आलि इब्राहीम इन्नका हमीदुम मजीद। अल्लाहुम्मा अंसुर मन नसर दीन मुहम्मदिन सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम वजअलना मिनहुम। अल्लाहुम्मा अख़्ज़ुल मन ख़ज़ल दीन मुहम्मदिन सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम वला तजअलना मिनहुम। इन्नल्लाहा यामुरु बिल अदलि वल इहसानि व इताइ ज़िल क़ुरबा व यन्हा अनिल फ़हशाइ वल मुनकरि वल बग़ि यइज़कुम लअल्लकुम तज़क्करून। उज़्कुरुल्लाह यज़कुरकुम वदूहु यस्तजिब लकुम व लज़िक्रुल्लाहि आला अकबर।